dead money happens, sometimes it is unavoidable, such as when it is due to career-ending injuries, which are usually not foreseeable. More often teams take dead money charges because of declining skill or because the team needs to make room for a more important player. Dead money is defined as money a team paid to a player who at the end of the season was not on a team's active or inactive list. Fans usually think of dead money solely as signing bonuses already paid to a player but which have not yet been accounted for on the cap for a player no longer on the team. Unfortunately, OTC and Spotrac use the stricter definition. Thus, Clinton Dix is listed as having a $2.82 million in dead money charge. That's the amount the Packers actually paid him for playing in the first 7 games. Because the team traded him, he did not end up on Green Bay's roster at the end of the season, so he was listed under dead money. That is a limitation of the dataset, but I think it is still useful for comparison. Green Bay Packers fans are used to tiny dead money amounts. That is in part due to the way Ted Thompson operated. Few free agent signings and giving draft picks several years to blossom leads to low dead money charges. Other teams operate differently. How much dead money is normal? In 2018, the average amount of dead money was $21.6 million. Using Spotrac figures, the average is not very useful because the number is skewed by Buffalo, which had a whopping $70.34 million in dead money, followed by Arizona with $40.23 million. The median is $18.19 million. I believe the median cited, while technically correct, can be misleading because the 16th ranked team had $16.28 million and the 17th ranked team had $20.09 million. That's actually a large difference between most slots on the ranking. The Packers ranked 12th with $14.98 million. The main Packer players involved were Bennett, $4.2 million, Clinton Dix, $2.82 million, Nelson, $2.3 million, Randall, $1 million, and Toomer, $630,000. For those interested, the Packers' largest dead money hits since 2011 were Bennett, $4.25 million, Shields, $3.25 million, and Collins, $2.3 million. Is there any correlation between dead money and wins? Definitively answering that question would require looking at multiple years and comparing those results to wins for the teams. Looking at just 2018, there does seem to be some correlation, but not as much as I expected or where I expected. Since there are 32 teams, I looked at 8 sets of teams. 4 teams per set are quantile. They are called octiles. Teams ranked 1st to 4th. The first octile, for lowest dead money charges, averaged 7.75 wins. The second octile averaged 8.25 wins. 5th, 8th. The third octile averaged 8.5 wins. The fourth octile, teams that ranked 13th through 16th, lacked Chicago, Houston and LAR with $15.37 million to $16.28 million in dead money, averaged 12 wins. The 5th octile averaged 8 wins, the 6th octile averaged 7.5 wins, the 7th octile averaged 6 wins, and the 8th octile averaged 5.25 wins. That is an asymmetrical distribution that is positively skewed rather than a bell-shaped curve. Of the teams in the last octile, Washington, Arizona, the Giants, and Buffalo, 3 were rebuilding and were not expected or even trying to maximize wins in 2018. Washington was 29th with $33.93 million and Dallas was 28th, which actually is in the next higher octile, with $32.68 million in dead money. Were both trying to win. Washington ended up with 7 wins, but probably would have won more except Alex Smith got injured, and Dallas ended up with 10 wins. I looked at 2 teams in the AFC, Pittsburgh and New England, and 2 in the NFC, Seattle and Green Bay, which have clearly been trying to win Super Bowls since 2011. I chose 2011 because that is the first year of the new CBA and because that is how far back the more or less readily available data goes. As you can see from the table below, the Packers have averaged $6.69 million in dead money per year since 2011 and has 79 wins in that time frame. Pittsburgh comes in at $11.28 million and 82 wins. New England averaged $14.27 million in dead money and had 99 wins. Seattle averaged $16.72 million and 82 wins. I do not see dead money as something that should be avoided at all costs. I looked at New Orleans as well, but that team is crazy. Since 2015, the Saints have averaged $31.42 million in dead money by team in year. Team 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. Avenue C 20.57, 22.998, 8.37, 17.97, 19.63, 14.167, 22.7, 4, 16.72, Na 5.2, 18.67, 16.7, 18.66, 19.48, 17.53, 7.23, 10.72, 14.27, Pitt 3.09, 9.86, 12.96, 14.43, 20.14, 11.73, 11.86, 8.16, 11.28 gigabytes, 3.08, 4.7, 3.12, 5.48, 5.44, 4.66, 12.07, 14.98, 6.69. There are other ways to waste money and cap space. The general manager that never signs an expensive free agent, because that type of signing carries both risk and large signing bonuses and guaranteed money limits exposure to dead money hits, but may well not be maximizing the overall talent on the team. Ditto is to the general manager that refuses to cut his own draft picks, particularly for first-round picks, whose 4-year contracts are 100% guaranteed for the most part. While I do not mean to turn this site into Beantown.com, I have to note Belichick signed Revis to a 2-year deal with $10 million in signing bonus in 2014. He knew he was going to cut Revis in 2015 and take a $5 million dead money charge. That might make him look bad, but it did not deter Belichick. The Patriots won the Super Bowl in 2014 and no one cared about that pesky dead money charge or thought it was a waste. Deciding whether to accept the dead money charge or not always involves evaluating the player. It can require an evaluation of the roster as a whole as well. Few believed that Clay Matthews would be sufficiently productive to justify his $11.40 cost. Ditto for Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson in their scheduled $9.5 million and $10.2 million cash earnings in 2018. It took a stretch of the imagination to believe that Nick Perry or Jimmy Graham would be productive enough to justify their expected cash earnings, their AAV, or their cap numbers in 2018. Take your pick. If Gutekunst did not expect to get any surplus value out of those players, keeping them can be seen as simply wasting money and cap space. It can only be justified if he thought the roster as a whole with the production of those players was good enough to make the Packers a contender. Perhaps if everything had gone well, such as great health and those players producing as well as one reasonably hoped, the Packers would have been true contenders in 2018. I will always suspect that Gutekunst felt the need to give Mike McCarthy a fighting chance to succeed. Nick Perry has $11.1 million in dead money and cap savings of $3.337 or $10.737 million, depending on how the dead money is divvied up. That is the hand general manager Gutekunst was dealt, and those numbers should not unduly concern him. What matters is the future, that is, future cost versus the expected value of Perry's future play. Perry is scheduled to receive $10.4 million in cash if he plays for the Packers in 2019, plus the potential for another $600,000 in a game active bonus. That should be the main consideration, not dead money. The Packers can pay $10.04 to $11 million cash in 2019 to save $3.7 million in dead money, and the team would get the value of Perry's play, should they. Perry might play so well that he is worth his $11 million or even so well that Green Bay wants him back in 2020. One could argue that the team breaks even if Perry's play is worth about $7.3 million, $11 million paid in 2019 minus $3.7 million saved in dead money. I would suggest that just perpetuates trotting out underperforming players to avoid dead money. After consulting with the medical staff, Gutekunst needs to decide if Perry is going to make a full recovery. If yes, then Gutekunst has to decide whether a healthy Perry is still a good or a very good player. If yes, then he needs to decide whether Perry will remain healthy long enough to produce on the field. If yes, keep him. If there is a no or two in there, or if there are equivocal answers, then Gutekunst should release Perry or obtain a pay cut so that the risk is greatly reduced. The analysis is almost the same for Graham and Williams. The difference is that they are older and Williams is only under contract for 2019, so Gutekunst needs to evaluate the roster as a whole. Does Gutekunst think the Packers can contend in 2019? If not, he has to consider releasing Williams, who is only under contract for 2019 and is getting older, and perhaps Graham, unless he thinks they will still be good players in 2020. Graham is scheduled to earn $9 million. Williams is scheduled to earn $4.75 million. It appears that quite a few things need to go well for Green Bay to be real contenders in 2019. The Packers do have more ammunition than normal in terms of draft picks, particularly picks in rounds 1 through 4, and in cap space to help plug holes. Teams have caught lightning in the draft and free agency, but if general manager Gutekunst is really looking at 2020 to contend, then he has to consider releasing Tramon Williams to clear $4.75 million in cap space, since Williams is both older and not even under contract for 2020. Ditto for Graham. Although 2020 is his last contract year, if there is enough ammunition to make a real run in 2019, then it makes some sense to keep them. In hindsight, doing a rebuild rather than a reload in 2018, which probably means releasing not just Nelson but Cobb and Matthews as well, and not signing older players, would have resulted in the Packers a lot more cap space and better draft picks in each round to look forward to in 2019. I have to admit I was in favor of the reload option. General managers can waste cap resources simply by trotting out players for an extra year or two with bloated salaries and cap charges, even though the skills of those players have deteriorated due to age or injury. Doing that wastes cap space as much as dead money does. Teams should make decisions on each player for the right reasons, unless the general manager has all in for that year or a couple of years. Every general manager makes mistakes. Admit clear mistakes and take the hit if that is what the evaluation independent of cap consequences suggests.